As promised, we are back again, and a big thank you to you, Trisha, for allowing us to record back to back, because I myself is so curious, as if I'm traveling to the journey all back again. And I'm so helpful, so thankful to you that you have helped all the listeners so much in explaining the XAT for the first time on Leader, in making so much in detail. People who are looking forward to learn how to appear in XAT exam, what all contributed, the total duration, the sections, they must listen to Trisha's first podcast, because in this podcast, we will be talking more about the XLRI HR program, the application process, maybe GD, maybe interview, much in detail. So over to you, Trisha. Thank you so much.
Thank you. My pleasure to have me back for back-to-back sessions. Where do I begin? Should I begin with the application process for XLRI?
You got
Is that
your
where we can begin?
percentile 93, and then you
Acha,
received an
udhar se.
application form.
Done. Okay, yes. So, yeah, so around first, 2nd January was the XAT entrance exam. By Jan end, I think the cutoffs had come and answer key had come. So I calculated my score and figured out कि मेरे को इतना मिलेगा ही based on past year's trends. And I was sure that I would clear the cutoff. And by February, first or second week, I think we got emails, official emails from the XLRI's admission cell to all the shortlisted candidates.
Okay.
And I had got a shortlist for both the business management program and the HR management program. The business management program's cutoff was 92 percentile. So I had
Okay.
cleared that also by just a little, and HR's as well I had cleared. So then what happens is they give you a login ID and a password to a specific dashboard for the XAT process, where
Okay.
they said at a given date and time they will release the slot booking ability too. So they said all the interviews will be conducted between I think, yeah, the entire month of March, and I think April also, they said interviews will be conducted and you have to book your slot time basis. But of course, it is first come, first serve. All the candidates will be trying to book what is convenient for them. So what most people do is if they clear both of the programs, and if they have a preference to one, is they book the one that they have a preference in for a later slot. Taki, they use the first interview as a rehearsal. For example, all the people who are keen on business management, I think use the HR interview as a sort of rehearsal, and some people do vice versa. Now,
I would like to,
and of course,
I would
yes,
like to interrupt you here. Now, this needs little clarity here, that once you give one
hmm,
XAT exam, you can appear
yes,
for two different programs interview. One is a
yes,
general MBA, which is a general
yes,
management course for 2 years, and another is a
yes,
specialized HR 2-year program. Am I understanding
yes.
you correctly?
That is completely correct. So there are
Oh,
two programs, HR
oh,
management and business management. We refer to that as BM. Now, business management, you can specialize in a particular thing by the 2nd year. So first year, the course is common. Now, right now, I'm talking only about the business management program, not HR. In the business management program, everybody goes through the same subjects for the first 1 year. 2nd year, you get to pick electives, pick subjects that you want to do. And each subject is categorized. For example, all the marketing subjects are categorized with a marketing code. The strategy subjects are classified with strategy. Finance are classified with the fin code. So ultimately, let's say I have picked about 3/4 subject strategy, 10% finance, 10% marketing. Strategy becomes my specialization automatically. So that is allowed for the business management program, where they have a one specialization, and they can also say like a major in this, minor in this sort of thing. Regarding whether it shows on their degree or not, I do not have clarity on that. I'll have to confirm with my peers
that's
from the
okay.
business
That's
management
okay.
course. But
Yeah.
HR management, there is no such specialization. You
Okay.
get a PGDM in HR management. That's it. We also have classifications of subjects such as organizational behavior, or people analytics or economics. We also have classifications, but that does not end up becoming a specialization. Ultimately, our entire ambit is just HR management.
HR.
That
Okay. For
specialization
2 years.
exists
Okay.
only for BM. Yes,
Okay.
that's it.
Okay.
That is the process. So yes, with this one entrance exam, you are eligible for both based on whether you have cleared the cutoffs or not. And
Okay.
you are eligible to appear for both interviews as well. Another thing that you're eligible for that I want to clarify is XLRI has another campus in Delhi, NCR campus in
Okay.
Jhajjar.
Okay.
So that campus currently only has the business management program. It does not have HR management.
Okay.
So, of course, if I'm appearing for HR management, my only option is XLRI Jamshedpur.
Jamshedpur.
But let's say I want to appear for business management, and that is my preference. So you get to pick, obviously, what is your campus preference. Most people who pick XLRI Jamshedpur because it's an older campus, simply because of that.
The
But
flagship
based on your
campus. Yeah.
exactly. But based on your interview, it is up to the admission panel to classify you into which campus you want to go to.
Okay.
So a lot of my friends, actually, they had got into my business management program friends. They had first been qualified for the Delhi campus program, but got waitlisted for XLRI Jamshedpur's BM program.
Okay.
And then as the waitlist moved up, they got a call from XLRI Jamshedpur only finally last week में कि आपका इधर भी clear हो चुका है. So you
Okay.
pick, do you want to continue in Delhi campus or do you want to come to Jamshedpur campus? And then they end up coming to Jamshedpur campus. And of course, some remain in Delhi campus and their placements are also almost at par with us. So it's not such a big
So
gap
since
or
you
issue.
were very clear that you want to go for HR, so you appeared for both the processes, BM and
I
HR.
still appeared for both.
Acha.
Yes.
So generally students appear for both, even if they are sorted?
Yes. Yeah, that is a trend. There are very few who appear for only one. They
Acha.
usually have like a sort of backup in their mind, or कोई ना at least practice हो जाएगा.
Practice ho
So
jayega, and
with
maybe
that
people don't
mindset,
want to lose this option. This is no
exactly.
doubt about
It
it.
is
It's a
1 year of your
prestigious.
life getting wasted.
Yes, true. So you appeared
Exactly.
for
I
both the
think
processes.
yes, definitely. So, yeah, and I think maybe I might have, let's say, taken maximum one gap year. But I think if it was after 1 year I was writing it, even I would take whatever I got. I mean, time
Sure,
is precious ultimately, right? And if a
sure.
tier one institute is giving you a course, bas aang ban karke le lo is what
Same.
everybody believes. So,
GG.
yeah,
So there was no GD, but you were supposed to pick up your interview slot when you appeared for
yeah,
exam in January. You immediately got the
yes,
result. And in few days time, you got the slots for March and April. And whenever you are ready for interview and you appeared for both the programs, you booked
yes,
your interview slots. There was no
yes.
GD.
There was no GD. This is, I am going to clarify, there was no GD for 2022, 2021, and 2020 because of the pandemic. That is the
True.
only reason, because they prefer to have their GDs offline.
Okay.
Because when it's an online GD, muting, unmuting ke chakkar mein, I don't think they really like navigating
Uh,
that. They feel
uh,
like the true candidate's presence doesn't come through. So it did not happen for those 3 years because of the pandemic. But currently, like this year's entrance, I mean, the people who have joined my college this year, they have had a GD as well that was conducted in
okay.
a physically present environment, not online.
Okay. Being a pass out and a alumni, a conscious and a studious alumni, I should say, would you like to give any quick tips if they're appearing in person GD interview process for the people who will be applying for this year?
So see, personally, I've never sat through an in-person GD. I think that even during my college placements, it was always online GDs that I have sat through. In person, I've
Okay.
not sat through. But for
Okay.
GDs in general, I can give some of my suggestions. I
Sure.
would say that um, don't speak just for the sake of speaking. A lot of people, let's say the GD is only for 10 minutes and there are, 10 candidates on the panel. It becomes a fish market because if you roughly divide, it's 1 minute per person. So everybody wants a chance to talk. And sometimes, like you have a point in your mind and you're planning to go next. But somebody, let's say before you, has already said that point. Then you are left with nothing to say. But आपके मन में है कि नहीं, मुझे कुछ तो बोलना है, वरना I will go unnoticed. And you end up unmuting and saying something just for the sake of saying it. And that, I'm being very honest, whoever is sitting on the other end and judging you can't see. They can see through and they can make out ki just for the sake of making your presence felt, aapne aise kiya hai. And I feel like that is something that backfires on a lot of candidates that they do not realize in that moment. So jo
True.
bhi aapko bolna hai, like make sure content, like quality over quantity. That is what I would definitely say for GD. If you are
Sure.
making only one entry, make sure that entry is a solid, significant entry versus going on unmuting and talking 3-4 times where you're not really steering the conversation, you're not giving direction to the conversation, you are not adding value. There is no point doing that, is what I feel.
Sure.
Another thing
Sure.
is also respect, I think. Well, see, ultimately in a GD, it becomes very ruthless when there is something you all want at the other end of the line. Everybody is looking out for themselves. I will not say try and, like, I'm not going to say be a very angelic person and keep letting other people go in front of you. Aise nahi chalta hai. You need to put your point forth. But at the same time, there's a way to do it. A lot of people end up unmuting and just cutting a person short in the middle of a sentence. That also gets noted and is taken in a very bad way. Always interrupt by saying, if I may, or I would like to add something here. Do you mind if I put my point forth? Maintain a certain amount of courtesy or politeness in whatever you're saying or the way you're expressing yourself. I think that goes a long way and gets interviewed also. I mean, sorry, what do I say? Perceived also by the companies that are interviewing you.
Sure.
These are the
So,
two tips that I would have.
great. Thank you for adding your experience into that. And this is especially for my listeners and followers, that we have a lot of videos on GD, which has been posted by me. But to support you right in the moment, what Trisha is also saying, your tone, your delivery of what you know, and your choice of words, that is going to be very, very important. And here is a quick tip from my own experience and guidance to students, that if you know the topic, you may start. If you have some idea, always share your thoughts in middle. And if you don't know anything about the topic, please summarize what you have learned, put your own blend of
Perfect.
analysis into that, and then close the GD. That's the only three spaces wherein you can contribute with your existing knowledge. So, Trisha, which interview you picked up first, the BM one or the HR one?
I had my BM interview first and then I had my HRM interview.
Okay, so can you please share what happened in the BM interview first, if you remember?
Sure. Yes. So my BM interview had about 4 panelists.
Okay.
So what I gather, I don't have clarity on this even now, but what I gather is the panelists are usually a mix of XLRI professors
Sure.
as well as XLRI alums.
Okay.
Alums that have, completed a certain number of years of experience and who are now well versed in
In
the
the
industry.
industry,
They are
yeah,
also invited
well
to sit in.
placed.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So, yeah, this was the panel, and I remember complete poker faces on the panel. What I've said, is it true, false, correct, wrong? No idea. Till date, I don't know whether my answers were correct or not. But so the questions I think were the BM interview, I will say, was slightly more. Uh, I would say it was. I would not call it a stress interview as such, but it was a little more serious and for me slightly more nerve-wracking than my HR interview.
Okay.
Um, they asked me, I think, it was a lot of, they tested all aspects. Like, I'll give you an example of some questions that I recall. I'll try to
Sure.
do my best.
Sure.
One of the examples was, what is the definition of a derivative?
Okay. Okay.
So, then normally what came to my mind was dy by dx is a
Hmm.
derivative of anything.
Okay.
Then they say, but that is a formula of a derivative. What is a derivative? Then I began saying, see, a derivative of acceleration would be this. I'm trying to give examples and plugging it in the formula. They said, we understand how the formula works. What exactly is a derivative? Then this was something I remember a lot of people had told me, ki agar you cannot think of something, instead of saying something foolish, ask for a minute from them to think. So luckily
Okay.
I thought of that in that moment and I said, please give me 1 minute to think. I know the answer. I want to frame it properly.
Okay.
And I took some time out and I said that the whole idea of differentiation, integration, calculus in mathematics is basically when things are broken down into small, small, minute values and are changing and are dynamic in such small quantities that we needed to come up with a whole system to calculate what parts or portions of numbers or values are. So I think a derivative would be that. And that is when they finally let me go and moved on to the next question. So I'm hoping that that was the answer they wanted, which is why they let go of me, or maybe they gave up on me and moved on to the next question. That was one example that stood out to me because I did not expect a question like that.
Okay.
Then another question was, you are an architect, so do you have idea of stakeholders involved in your projects? So I said yes. They said, what are stakeholders primarily? So I said things like clients, your vendors, your suppliers, your employees of the firm, all of that. Then they said, example is, we want to build a dam across the city. What are all the stakeholders in this project, end to end? And what are potential problems that could be encountered? This was one question. I answered that to the best of my knowledge. Again, I don't think you can prepare, like, this is what you think in the moment, you can give basic answers. And I remember they kept pushing me, saying, or kuch, any more stakeholders, any more problems, think. Like, till I think I named at least 5 to 6 of each, they did not move on to the next question. They wanted me to exhaust my maximum potential and give them answers. Then they asked me basic things like, so one thing that I think I faltered on in my preparation that I will definitely say everybody preparing should do for an interview is learn how to solve guesstimates. They asked me many guesstimates, like if you have to calculate the number of people in Bangalore that have bought two-wheelers in the past 1 year, how would you go about it? Or
Okay.
if you have to calculate the number of new buildings that have been constructed in urban part of Bangalore, how would you go about it in the past 1 year? So
Okay.
so this I did not like after the interview when I read about it on Quora and hindsight, I realized it's a very general topic that a lot of people prepare for. I don't know how I missed it in my preparation. That is completely like my fault. But it was so there is a very systematic way to go about it. You first calculate the population of Bangalore based on what your last knowledge is. Then you calculate what is the population of Bangalore that is earning an income that can afford two-wheelers. Then you calculate a population of Bangalore, then you calculate the number of two-wheeler showrooms in Bangalore approximately. Then you kind of come up with the ratio. So there is a way of solving. It's a very step-by-step process. There are many tutorials to solve guesstimates available online, even if you are not attending a coaching class. And if you are, I urge you to ask your mentors to teach you how to solve them when you get your interview shortlist because it is very helpful. So that was something I feel I did not do an excellent job answering. That may
Okay.
have been a reason that I did not qualify for the business management program.
Okay.
Um, yeah, so that is one thing I remember. Then I think there were general questions like what is the safest metro city in the country, according to you? So this is where I would say that it's not like I had like mugged up that fact from somewhere, but this is based on constant newspaper skimming that I gathered that Mumbai is the safest metro city for
Okay.
women. So that
Okay.
you get see that is I would say an example of like an educated guess because your subconscious has read so much in your mind ki somewhere in that moment you would end up saying something that is logically correct and it's not a complete guess that answer.
Sure.
Then yeah, I guess it was more that. And of course, I would say you have a solid introduction. This is something I would really like to share that I think helped me a lot in both my interviews. Is something my coaching institute had told me that your introduction sets the tone for the interview. So try and make your introduction in such a way that you insert a fact about yourself in the introduction that gives them fodder to ask questions. So technically steer them or manipulate the interview in such a way that you are going to be questioned at least in the beginning about ground that you are comfortable with. I'll give you an example. For example, introduce yourself saying you are from so and so, what your background is, where you're from, what your undergrad or work experience has been, and then insert something like, let's say I say I'm passionate about reading books or I'm a voracious reader. Then that leaves room for if the interviewer takes the chance to ask you, okay, what is the last book you read? Or what is your favorite author? And this is ground that I am comfortable with. So I can talk at length about the last book I've read. I can even present a deep insight or an analysis into what I liked about it. Or if it is what is your favorite author, I can tell them why it is my favorite author, what I like the most about the author, what has stood out to me, what has inspired me. And then I automatically take the conversation into territory that I am comfortable with. Unless, of course, they choose to intervene and completely change the topic, then I have to adjust to that. But this was something, or for example, I have a black belt in karate. So this is something they said a lot of people might not have, or it might catch the fancy of the interviewer. So try and mention that in your introduction. So they begin to ask you, okay, what are the levels of karate? What are the kathas you know? What are the this was something that a mock interviewer had asked me. What are the advantages and disadvantages of learning a martial art? So this basically in your introduction itself, insert something that is unique to yourself that they don't hear every second or third candidate saying. So, you steer the conversation into something that is comfortable territory. This is one tip I have. Now, it may not always work. There is a chance they will ignore that and ask their set of questions that they had prepared. Of course, there is that. But if it works, then excellent for you, right?
Sure. Sure. I completely, appreciate your energy and your memory that even though you were not exactly preparing for BM program, but you were able to remember and recall so many questions. And this is a brilliant tip, the way you inquired about taking that time for 1 minute. This is a very important, unique tip for people, that if you want to really frame your questions, or if you want to really give sequence to your thought process, please seek some little time from the interviewer, so that you frame it accordingly, you sequence it accordingly, and then you reply back with the great answer. And I must say, when you talk about martial arts, I don't know what is going to come next, but what I was sensing, that you are a bundle of multiple talents. And in case if an interviewer is going to see your CV, there will be so many, hidden secrets which are going to come out from your CV. I would also like to tell all my listeners that, having handled campus placements myself for roughly 21 years, guesstimates is one of the most important topic whenever you are even going for your job interviews after your course completion. And guesstimates do come from the level of 0 to 2 years a lot in your interviews, or maybe some analysis written paper also. So remember, especially for management program, whether it is general MBA or it is a hardcore HR program, or even if in future you are doing anything related to core finance, core marketing, you will get guesstimates related questions in your campus interview, online or offline as well. This is definitely one of the most important topic. And finally, you didn't clear the BM interview you shared, but still you
No,
remember your
I did
lovely
not.
experience. So
That is
you
why I
opted
will
for,
remember it, because I didn't clear.
great, you got in HR. So after BM, you also
Yeah.
booked your slot for HR.
Yes.
And especially students who are on my channel for HR, and people who are asking so many questions from you, from me, must listen to Trisha right now, because now she's explaining your interview questions for admission in a core HR program, and that too from XLRI. Over to you, Trisha.
Sure. So yes, from the BM interview, I learned two things. I needed to so in general, if in case you haven't noticed, I have a tendency to talk slightly fast, and it becomes faster when I'm nervous. So this
Okay.
was something that I kept in mind, that I need to be very clear and articulate in whatever I'm saying. And guesstimates, so pakka, after the BM interview, I learned how to do it. I was like, how can I go for an interview without learning it? So in case the HR people ask me, I need to know or be prepared this time. That was the two things I did.
Okay.
Additional prep before between BM and HR. That's it. The HR interview, I would say, I think the panelists were, again, I think four panelists, again, four, I think male panelists only. And here, at least when I entered, they were smiling at me. So it put me at ease. The four of them were at least smiling initially. So I think they initially asked me to introduce myself, and what I remember they did was they tried to, I think they really tested my application of what I have learned so far in the real time scenario. I'll give you an example. This was, I think, one of the first questions of my interview that, in fact, set the tone for the rest of my interview. They asked me, so you have done architecture. um yeah, they first asked basic questions about architecture. What would be the difference in the way you design a space for a cafeteria and the way you design a space for an office? What are the things you'll keep in mind? So I spoke about basic footfall. In a cafeteria, the footfall is not consistent throughout the day. During lunch, dinner, I mean, dinner to nobody goes. Breakfast, dinner, lunch, the footfall peaks, and then it's khali for the rest of the day. In an office scenario, the footfall is more or less uniform the whole day, at least 9 to 5 ke beech mein. And then about aisle spaces. In an office, people tend to walk up and down more often. So the aisle spaces should be bigger. In a cafeteria, people sit and go. So it's okay if the arrangement isn't exactly. Ventilation. These are all technicalities about architecture. I don't want to bore you all with it. This was a core architecture question. I'll put it under that category. Then they moved on to, okay, Trisha. So I mentioned that I come from a slightly diverse background, in the sense my mother is a Malayali, born and brought up in Delhi. My father is a Maharashtrian who has lived across 8 cities in India, because my granddad had a transferable government job. So every 2 years, he kept shifting cities. So I come from a multicultural family. I'm half Malayali, half Maharashtrian, and I'm settled in Bangalore. I've been brought up in Bangalore my full life. So this is a lot of states and cultures and a lot of languages also that I know. So they said, you yourself come from a diverse background. They said something like, when you are in an architecture firm, they gave me an example of, I have a project, and they said that, let's say you have vendors from different vendors, different suppliers from different parts of the country, and you have a project, and they all have, and your firm employees also have differing views about how a house should look. Let's say you want to design it in a particular architecture style, and your employees are saying ki nahi, I think this architecture style will suit it, that will suit it, and because of that they have a sort of tiff, or it becomes hard for you to manage. They said, so as a manager, what would you do? And reflect upon your personal experiences and how you also come from a diverse background yourself. So one thing I said was, see, while growing up, so my parents have been brought up in very different manners because they're from different parts of the country. So I said, of course, while growing up, there are certain scenarios or incidences in my life that I have encountered where my parents want me to, do something in a certain way. But the other parent, for example, even the way we do namaskar in both my communities are different. In Kerala, we lie down, like, how we do namaskar to Bhagwan in the north. We put our forehead to the ground. We do that to do namaskar of anybody, relative or an elder person. Whereas in Maharashtra, we touch the feet. So there are different ways of that also from both the cultures I come from. So I was explaining to them that, see, the ultimate goal is, end goal of my parents is what? To bring me up in a holistic manner, in a culturally immersive manner, and for me to do well in life. So ultimately, when it comes down to nitty-gritties, what they have to keep in mind is not the short-term goal. They have to keep in mind the long-term goal. What is the long-term goal? Bring their child up in a holistic manner. The short-term goal is to teach me these small differences in their culture. Similarly, in an office setting, what is the long-term goal? To meet the project deadline and satisfy the client in an architecture firm. So I need to remind my team of the long-term goal of the fact that we have a project to deliver. This is what the client expects. Then get into these small nitty-gritties of what should the roof's architecture style be, what should the balusters architecture style be, and then you handle it accordingly. So when you get into a cycle of thinking about short-term goals is when you need to re-establish the long-term goal, get everybody aligned on the same platform, and then move forward from there. So I said, this is a learning I have seen what happens with my parents when they were bringing me up, and that is what I think I would apply in a scenario like this in my office if it happened. So I remember them being very pleased with that answer. One or two smiles came out of those poker faces. And then we
To
moved on
remember
with
their
different
poker
questions.
faces more. But you
Yes.
know what I feel after listening to you, that you were very intense with your answer. So what I am sensing after listening to you, and this is for my listeners to learn, that the panel definitely is from different backgrounds. You know, one professor you will have from economics, one from HR, one from finance, maybe three alumni, people who are well settled in the HR industry, HR functions. They check your belief system, they check your value system, your ethics and your upbringing, your understanding towards yourself, your family, your culture, and your surrounding. I think more than what you know, how you deliver with great sense to all these aspects, this is definitely the check from the HR panel side. So what other questions you remember at the moment which you would like to share with the
Sure.
listeners?
I think then they also asked me why, of course, why HR. So I
Sure,
spoke about,
very
I had gone
important.
through the syllabus beforehand. And I
Hmm.
had I spoke about particular subjects I liked, and what I told you in our previous recording about the fact that I always was a people person. I like the user group analysis part. I said all that to them as well. And they said, okay, so what subjects have caught your fancy in our syllabus? So I said organizational behavior, etc. sound very interesting to me. So they said, what have you read up about it? So I realized, see, they're not expecting I do not have the textbook in my hand yet. So of course, they're not expecting a word perfect answer. They are just testing whether you actually have an interest in it or not. So I myself had personally gone and read a particular, like some amount of articles about organizational behavior. We call it OB. I read articles about OB, what the basics are, what we'll probably cover in a MBA course. As I told them कि देखो मैंने इतना पढ़ा था, and this is what has caught my interest and looking forward to this aspect. So they were pleased, I think, to know that okay, I have taken interest and gone and done some pre-reading beforehand. Then I remember they asked me, have you had any course in architecture that is somewhat similar to anything you'll cover in HR? So there was an elective I had taken myself in architecture about culture and its built environment and how culture influences architecture, etc. So I said we did a whole course about culture and sociology there. So then they said, okay, what is your definition of culture? Now, again, I don't think they were looking for a word perfect answer, but they were looking to see if I genuinely have an interest, how much of it I recall. So I gave some answers pertaining to that. Then I think they asked me some hardcore architecture questions were there to test. I think so there is something called green building in architecture. So there are you have certain laws that govern, there are criteria you have to meet in order for, there's some calculation involved. So I think they were looking up then what can we ask. See, another thing I would say is if you're an engineering student, it's a much more common course. So they're prepared with many questions to ask engineering students, is what I feel. Architecture is not something a lot of people also know a lot about. So I feel like the questions also were a little more basic than for my case. I think that helped me in a way.
So that was your basic advantage or strength, maybe.
I think so. I
Yeah.
think so. Yes.
Yeah. So, how
And
much time you got in between these two interviews, BM and HR interview?
I think 2 weeks.
2 weeks. And did you, apart from guesstimates, did you prepared anything additional for your HR interview?
No, like I said, I went through the HR syllabus particularly and I looked at
Okay.
certain subjects. That's all.
Okay. Okay. I think you were sharing some more questions and I immediately put my question. Yeah.
No. I was just trying to think of, I remember I was just going to say the last question was that geography question that I spoke about in our previous part. That
Okay.
was the end of the interview. But yeah,
Okay.
in between, it was mainly, I would say, they move very systematically. First, they tested my hardcore architecture knowledge. Then they tested what I know about HR and why HR. Then they tested architecture and HR ka linking, like with that example of the case I gave you. If my firm has diverse opinions, how would I handle it? They tested that. And then at the end, they tested basic GK with a geography question. Both
Okay.
my interviews were for about 20 to 25 minutes.
Okay. So both the interviews were from 20 to 25 minutes, but you brilliantly remember a lot of questions from both of your interviews. I forgot to inquire from you, anything specific students should be aware about filling the application form? Sometimes there is a statement of purpose, why you want to join MBA, why
Hmm.
HR, why business management. Sometimes it is a part of an application process. Sometimes there is
Yes.
an essay is a part of an application. Anything specific
Yes.
related to that area?
So I'll explain how it works for the XAT process. So I remember I told you that we have an essay in the entrance exam itself.
Yeah.
So that essay that we write then in that entrance exam gets recorded and stored with them, so that
Okay.
when you're filling your interview application, your essay also goes to them. So
Okay.
technically, on the day of the interview, if they want to question me about what I've written in the essay in the exam, they can open that tab and look at it and ask me pertaining to what I've written. I was not asked about it, but I have heard experiences of candidates whose essays have been brought up, saying, "Aapne essay likha tha exam mein. What was your logic for the essay? What were the reason for the points you have put forth?" That is one thing they can question you on. So be careful about what you write in the essay. Let me put it that
Yes.
way.
Yes.
If
Yeah.
somebody asks you about it, you should be able to answer why your opinion or stance is that.
Okay.
Apart from that, the application, yes, it does have an SOP. The SOP is more in the form of 4 to 5 questions. Why MBA? Why BM or why HR? What is your long-term goal? 5-year plan, short-term goal, those kind of generic answers. Now, again, we are all told that if the interview panel wants, they can tap into that and ask you questions based on that. But I was not asked anything based on my form. There are people who were asked based on their form.
Okay, okay. And I witnessed that you entered into XLRI immediately after your BArch. 22 you
Yes.
completed there and 22 you entered. Any specific
Yes.
eligibility criteria for both the programs?
There is, okay, so yes, completing a bachelor's degree is a must. Now, eligibility, I will not say there's a cap on work experience. In fact, in my
Okay,
class, there were people who were teachers who have, who were 30, 32 years. And they were my batchmates. They've had 10 years of working as a teacher in the industry. And I have people who were in the defense forces, armed forces, and they were also my batchmates. I have a doctor who has worked for 2 years who was my batchmate. So, very
okay,
diverse set of people. But what I would recommend personally is if you have more than 3 years of work ex, more than 3 to 4 years of work ex, maybe try and wait it out and apply for a executive PGDM program. We also have something called a GMP program, General Management Program, that is for people who have a certain amount of working experience. And
Okay.
people who have 5 to 6 years of work experience, they usually apply for a program like that. And that is a 1 year course, not a 2 year course, unlike these two programs. So that is what most people go for. My only reason to say this is because during the placement process, it becomes slightly harder because a lot of companies have an upper cap of 3 years work experience.
Oh,
So
I
then
see.
if you have more than that, it becomes harder. Your pool gets shortened, right? The eligibility pool. That is during your placement process. So purely from a job perspective, I would say that my personal recommendation is if you have more than 3-4 years of work experience, you wait it out and apply for the general management program of our college. Or there are like ISB, for example, is a college that is meant for people like that, I would say, by and large. Apply for a course like that. XLRI will not reject you basis on the number of work experience. That I will not at all say. There are many examples in our college that prove they do not. But purely from the placement point of view, it becomes a slight struggle.
Sure, we will inquire more about the placement process for listeners in time to come because you are already working in Leslie. We would like to hear about the whole campus placement process in detail. And in the next podcast, we would also like to hear about the syllabus, the exam patterns, and how difficult is the exam. But here, I would also like to inquire that how many students were there, or how many people were there in one batch when you were studying?
Yes. So the HR program has 180 students, 3 sections, 60 into 3, 180 students. The business management program again has 60 students per section, but they have 4 sections, which makes
Okay.
it 240
240.
students.
240 and
So
180
overall,
is the
240
intake every
plus
year.
180.
Okay.
Yes, that is the intake every year.
Okay. Any idea on the fees, if you remember?
Yes. So the total fees approximately is 25 lakhs. That is the academic fees. It is split into 12.3 lakhs for the first year and 12.75 lakhs for the second year. Apart from that, we also have residence fees, the hostel fees. That is 85,000 per year. And apart from that, we have other small things like caution deposit, then alumni membership status, all of those things that additionally you add up to around 70,000. So
Sure.
overall, I would say, and mess fees is also around 6,000 rupees per month, the mess bill. So overall, if you want a rough idea, 30 lakhs you can take for the entire program, taking care of the residence, food, as well as academic tuition. Purely academic fees is approximately 25 lakhs.
Sure. Thank you for sharing this. And I'm feeling so lucky that, we are getting such intense speakers on our channel. Leader in making. I think that's sheer luck of our listeners that they are getting each and every insight from people who have done the course from that particular institute. Trisha, I'm so excited and curious to know because you are sharing everything so much in detail. I would definitely love to know about the program in detail, how XLRI is so different in HR. But definitely we would like to have one complete episode on placements because core HR placements are not that in number the way we have for finance and marketing. How you prepared for the internship because you are from a different background. And I think we are going to maybe we'll do 2 or 3 more podcasts with you, including the
Sure.
queries. My personal thanks to you for taking taking all of us through your journey, which is so different, full of talents, full of memory, full of remembrance. And I think you are an intense worker since beginning, and whatever you do it with great passion. With this note,
Yeah.
Trisha, I really want to thank you from core of my heart. And people, stay tuned. We will bring back Trisha in the upcoming podcast very soon. Thank you so much, Trisha, for
Sure.
being with us.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you
Take
so
care. Bye bye.
much.